Good afternoon and welcome to today's QA session. Today we will be talking about challenges in implementing energy efficiency or sustainability measures in general when it comes to retail class of buildings. When we talk about retail class of buildings, we refer to Class 6 under the Building Code of Australia. This is where we are referencing facilities where goods and services are sold to the public. Um, Unlike large retail format like shopping centers or mall or commercial buildings or other type or classes of buildings that we discuss in other webinars, small businesses or small format retail have challenges, and there are a number of reasons why we have challenges in implementing energy efficiency measures or sustainability in general. And in this brief QA session, we'll touch on some of the key differentiators to why this environment is different and why major consultants will shy of getting involved in smaller format retail when it comes to identifying energy efficiency or sustainability measures, let alone implementing it. So let's look at the environment itself. First, we're talking, for those of you who know me, for those of you who know me, when I look at a facility and the feasibility of doing anything to that facility, whether improving the energy efficiency, implementing measures, or upgrading or retrofitting, I look at key two factors, not to undermine other factors, but those two key factors. Number one, operational feasibility, and number two, feasibility of the engineering solution, keeping in mind not everything viable from an engineering perspective is viable from an operational perspective. Um, that applies even to larger buildings. Like, for example, we can't recommend the same solution that we would recommend to an office environment to be applied to a hospital, to a factory. Same thing applies to retail. The characteristic of a small format retail or small businesses in general is that you are dealing directly with usually the operator, sometimes the owner of the business. And from an operational perspective, the priorities of keeping the business running will supersede any priorities that you might put in place, including energy efficiency and sustainability. And that's quite understandable when you look at it from their perspective, because small businesses struggle these days. And although it's gotten easier in terms of how you operate a business with all the supports being offered by the government, by the ATO, simplified accounting rules, simplified marketing, social media marketing, etc., it is still a lot of work to run a small business, let alone understanding or comprehending the impact of energy efficiency to the business and the impact of the business footprint to the overall emissions from an environmental perspective. So, understanding that cultural challenge or hindering factor is quite important to us on how we would approach someone to discuss the idea of improvement or what could occur in their facilities. Because again, they have operational challenges, and therefore, whatever engineering solutions we might put in place may not be viable from that perspective. And to come up with engineering solutions that might be viable, that might become a costly exercise. So that's the other challenge is the return on investment. Many of these businesses will struggle to basically maintain the operations. Therefore, if you're coming up with a solution, noting that it's a small business, you're unlikely going to approach it the same way you would approach a larger facility. So, for a larger facility, there would be some amount of investment to understand the solution, to adapt it to the business. And that investment could be driven by different factors, as you would have seen in other webinars we've conducted. I'm not going to touch on those now, just for the sake of time. From a small business perspective, that amount of investment and the return on investment will most likely be unjustifiable. Because if you look at a small business, and I'm going to pick up the example of a cafe or a small restaurant, is they sell goods or provide services to the public. And when they do that, the nature of the operation of the business from the public facing perspective, it could be simplistic. You've got lights, you've got air conditioning, you've got HVAC. From the back of house area of these small format retail or restaurants or cafes, there could be the preparation components that also consume energy. This is the part where it's challenging to find engineering solutions without some investment of time. We're talking about the cooking processes, refrigeration processes, packaging processes, if you're doing takeaway, and etc. And the challenge with that is you need to quickly understand the operation and nature of the business, and you need to develop a solution without impacting their operational nature, and implement that solution without impacting the operational nature. Where you can see where the hesitation builds up, and especially for a small business owner or operator, where they basically, if they actually part of their business and work within their business, for them to actually find the time to let you in, let alone escorting you and explaining to you what they do. And this is primary reason why larger or more larger consultancies won't get involved in this unless there is a volume to justify the involvement. By volume, I mean you're talking to a franchise that might have a number of smaller similar businesses where you piloted in one of them and roll it out on the others. Now, does that mean we can't do anything? On the contrary, there is a lot that could be done, but you have to be tactical about it. One of the ways I found successful in the past is simplifying what you're trying to do, but approaching businesses where you have the experience in dealing with them, or you might have worked in that business, or you might have delivered projects for that business. And that could be challenging. And if you don't have the experience, then seek the knowledge or borrow it. I mean, we teach a lot of courses talking about different types of facilities, etc. If you've got any questions about any business type or what could be applicable to them, reach out or post your questions in this community so we can answer it in the next QA session. If you don't have the capacity to invest in a course, just post the questions in this community and we will do our best to answer it. One of the most effective ways I found is find the funding for them for you to invest in understanding their problems. You're going to say what that means. Um, I'll explain. Australian governments, which is at a federal level, and local government areas often issue grants for small businesses. Many of those small businesses, they're not even aware of these grants because, as I said earlier, their priorities is to keep their business running. But if you are a consultant or worked in the business or can easily identify measures that you can do to that business, you might be able to say, look, these lights, the air conditioning, the refrigeration, the gas heating can be electrified, etc., etc. And you are aware of a grant within the LGA, local government area, or at the federal level available for that business, then help them out by putting an application together. I often approach businesses back then and I say, look, you are eligible to this grant. You are one of many businesses I'm approaching. If you are interested, we can help you put together the application and to get the grant for you. And if you would like us to implement this for you, we can bundle our costs as part of the application. And sometimes you have to take a risk. That the way we've done it in the past to say is, We don't want upfront payment from you. We understand the situations are hard for most businesses, but if you're successful in obtaining the grant, we take a percentage of this grant to cover our fees. If you're not successful, no harm done. We did our best. But again, for you to be in that position, you need to know a lot about the operation, engineering solutions, etc., to do it effectively. And you need to have a volume so you can approach a number of businesses at the same time and do it successfully. And also, you have to be careful of the culture and perception of grants from a business perspective. If you remember 5 or even 10 years ago, where you have people knocking on the doors offering to swap your light or aircon units in exchange of you assigning the certificates for them if they are Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificates in Victoria or Energy Certificate Scheme, SKEs in New South Wales. So that program, unfortunately, at the beginning of it was executed poorly, which created a bit of a bad reputation. So if you are a consultant trying to approach a small business, make sure that your spiel is refined and you don't approach it from the perspective as we give you something for free. There's nothing for free out there. Be professional, understand your value proposition, understand their challenges. And if you don't research it, um, and offer a solution where you can help them. Some businesses have the funding to actually invest in energy efficiency, but they just don't know how to go about it. If you're willing to put the upfront time and recover it in a different way later on as a percentage of you getting the work to implement some of these measures, that's another way of going about that. These are some high level ideas with the time we've got I wanted to share with you, but in general, the key takeaways of this QA session is implementing energy efficiency or sustainability measures in general in a small business is not impossible. It's actually quite feasible. You have to understand operational challenges. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the owner and operator and how would they perceive you approaching to them. One of the worst spiels I've seen consultants approaching a small business and say, we're going to save you energy and save the environment. Yes, they might have a genuine desire to save the environment, but they also need to keep the business running. So chances are asking them even of an hour of their time to invest with you, that's a big ask, especially for a cafe or a small restaurant. So be careful about your spiel on what you're offering. But if you're offering it from the perspective to say whether you've got a grant to offer or whether you've got the time to offer them to say, look, 15 minutes of your time. I'll walk around. If there's an opportunity, I'll let you know. From my perspective, I'll do the work. I'll give you a short list of what you could do. And should you wish to do it yourself, no hard feelings. Should you wish to engage us to do it, I'll charge a percentage of that to cover my fees. Um, you also got to be careful not to waste your time all the time doing this kind of things. But if you are confident, if you know the business, if you know the owners, if you're local, that approach might work. The other way I'd encourage you to look at small format retail is look at franchises. Franchises, they will always have a headquarter that governs how they do things. Approaching a headquarter and offering a pilot with the aim of learning from the pilot and rolling it out, it's a much more successful way of doing the work. I've done this many times in the past, but you need to have some skills in how you would approach the governing body, who in the governing body takes care of that kind of work. It's not like you just, I'm gonna knock on the door. I know the CEO, I'm gonna knock on their doors, I'm gonna explain to them what I'm gonna do. You can do that. I can guarantee you that's not the best way of doing that because CEOs, if you are lucky enough to get an audience with them, they'll push you down to the person who handles that. And often the person who handles that might meet you not because they're genuinely interested in meeting you, but because their CEO asked them to meet you. So I would suggest researching knowing your stakeholders. And if you're interested to know more about stakeholders and how you map them, look at one of our YouTube videos in our YouTube channel. It's free. That will give you a bit of more understanding about the general stakeholders, how they think, their priorities, and how you would approach them. Hope you found this very brief QA session useful. If you've got more questions, pop them in the chat, please. Every week we try to receive questions and answer them and design a QA session around your questions. As you would know, we've just started, therefore we don't have a lot of questions, and this is the reason why we're coming up with these topics for you to instigate your thought process. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.